The night my wife told me she didn't want to talk about our marriage anymore, I honestly thought she was about to leave me. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She didn't even sound disappointed. She just looked empty, like someone who had spent years carrying a heavy box and had finally decided to put it down. "I can't do this anymore, Michael." Those 7 words hit me harder than any fight we'd ever had, because Emily wasn't the kind of person who gave up. If anything, she tried too hard. She fought for everything she loved, especially us. So when she said she couldn't do it anymore, I thought I'd already lost her. 6 months later, we were happier than we'd been in over 10 years. Not because we fixed our marriage, because we finally realized we'd been trying to fix the wrong thing. Emily and I had been married for 15 years. We had an 11-year-old daughter named Olivia, a small house in the suburbs, 2 decent jobs, one old golden retriever who believed every visitor had come specifically to see him. From the outside, our life looked painfully ordinary, and honestly, most days it was. We weren't the couple that screamed at each other across the house. We weren't the couple sleeping in separate bedrooms. Neither of us had cheated. Neither of us had ever mentioned divorce. If you had asked our friends how we were doing, they probably would have said, "They're solid." That's the funny thing about solid things. Sometimes they crack long before anyone notices. Every evening followed the same routine. Dinner, Olivia disappearing upstairs with a book, Emily making tea, me loading the dishwasher. Then we'd sit across from each other at the kitchen table. Not to eat, to talk. At least, that's what we called it. Looking back, meeting would have been a better word. So, one of us always started with that word. Then came the questions. Did anything bother you this week? Do you feel like we've been disconnected lately? How do you think we're doing? Sometimes the conversations lasted 20 minutes, sometimes 2 hours. We discussed everything: work, money, housework, parenting, intimacy, communication, future plans. Nothing was off limits. Back then, I thought that made us a healthy couple. Now, I'm not so sure. One Friday, after we'd spent almost 90 minutes talking about why we'd both been feeling emotionally distant, we finally went to bed. The conversation had gone well. No arguing, no raised voices. We'd listened to each other, validated each other's feelings, agreed on what we wanted to do differently. I fell asleep feeling optimistic. The next morning I walked into the kitchen. Emily was making coffee. She smiled. "Morning." "Morning." I walked over and kissed her. Then before I'd even poured myself a cup, I asked, "So, are we okay now?" She stopped stirring her coffee, slowly turned toward me, then asked a question I'd never forgotten. "Do you know what worries me?" I shook my head. "You always need another answer." I laughed. "What does that mean?" "It means," she searched for the right words, "we spend so much time checking whether our marriage is okay, that I don't think we actually enjoy being married anymore." I brushed it off. Not because I didn't care, because I thought she was simply tired. We'd been going to couples therapy for almost a year, reading books, listening to podcasts during long drives, doing communication exercises before bed, working on ourselves, working on our marriage, working, all the time. I thought effort was the answer. I had no idea effort could become the problem. A few weeks later, Olivia walked into the living room while Emily and I were filling out another worksheet our therapist had given us. She looked at the papers spread across the coffee table, then at both of us. "What are you doing?" Emily smiled. "Homework." Olivia frowned. "You guys have homework every week." I laughed. "I guess we do." She thought about that for a second. Then she asked a question so innocent that neither of us answered. "Do married people always have meetings?" She wasn't making fun of us. She genuinely wanted to know. Emily looked down at the worksheet. I looked at my daughter, and for the first time, I wondered if she'd noticed something we'd completely missed. Because I suddenly realized I couldn't remember the last evening Emily and I had spent together without trying to improve our marriage. Olivia's question followed me for days. "Do married people always have meetings?" She hadn't meant to hurt us. She'd asked it the same way she'd ask why birds fly south or why dogs wag their tails. She was curious. That was the worst part. To her, our evening conversations weren't unusual. They were simply what marriage looked like. The following Wednesday, Emily texted me around noon. "Dinner at Luigi's. Just us. Mom can watch Olivia." I smiled. It had been a while since we'd gone out. "Sounds good." "7?" She replied with a thumbs up. Nothing more. Luigi's had been our restaurant since college. It wasn't fancy. The tablecloths had little wine stains no matter how many times they washed them. The waiter still carried a tiny notebook instead of using a tablet. The owner recognized us before we'd even sat down. "Long time," he said. "It has been," Emily answered. "You two still want the usual." She laughed. "You still remember?" "I remember everybody who orders extra bread." He pointed at me. "Especially him." Emily looked at me and smiled. "I told you, for the first 20 minutes, it was wonderful." We talked about Olivia's obsession with becoming a veterinarian, about my coworker who somehow managed to lock himself inside a storage room, about Emily's student who insisted Abraham Lincoln had invented basketball. We laughed. Real laughter, the kind that sneaks up on you. I couldn't remember the last time dinner had felt that easy. Then the food arrived. There was a pause. I looked at Emily. She looked back at me, and almost without thinking I said, "So," the moment the word left my mouth, I saw her shoulders drop, not dramatically, just enough for me to notice. "What?" I asked. She looked down at her plate. "I knew it." "Knew what?" "You made it almost half an hour." "I don't understand." She gave me a tired smile. "You were about to ask how you think we're doing." I opened my mouth, closed it again, because she was right. That was exactly what I had been about to ask. "I wasn't trying to ruin dinner," I said quietly. "I know. I just thought, I know." She picked up her fork. "I miss having dinners that stay dinners." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means." She looked around the restaurant. "Look at that couple." I turned. An older man and woman were sharing a dessert. Neither of them was speaking. Every now and then one of them smiled. "That was it," Emily continued. "I don't know what they're talking about. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything." She looked back at me, "But I guarantee they're not grading their marriage over cheesecake." I laughed, then stopped, because suddenly, I couldn't remember the last date we'd had that didn't eventually become a relationship check-in. It didn't matter where we went, restaurant, movie, walk, weekend away. Eventually one of us would ask, "So, how have you been feeling about us lately?" And the date would quietly disappear. On the drive home, neither of us mentioned it. The radio played softly. Cars rolled past in the opposite direction. Emily rested her head against the window. When we pulled into our driveway, she didn't get out immediately. She kept looking through the windshield. Finally, she asked, "Can I tell you something without you trying to solve it?" I nodded. "I don't need another conversation about our marriage." She took a slow breath. "I need my husband back." Before I could answer, she opened the door and walked inside. I sat in the car for another 5 minutes. Her words kept repeating in my head. "I need my husband back." I didn't understand them. I'd been there every day. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, helped Olivia with homework, went on date nights, never forgot anniversaries. What more could she possibly want? I honestly believed I was being the best husband I knew how to be, and somehow, it still wasn't enough. That night, lying awake beside her, I found myself asking a question I'd never considered before. If I was spending so much time trying to become a better husband, how had my wife started feeling like she'd lost me? The next morning felt strangely normal. Emily was making coffee. Olivia was arguing with the toaster because one slice had popped up and the other hadn't. Our golden retriever, Murphy, sat beside the table, convinced someone would eventually drop bacon. Nobody mentioned what Emily had said in the car. "I need my husband back." It was like those words had been placed in a sealed box neither of us wanted to open. Life kept moving. Monday became Tuesday. Tuesday became Wednesday. I went to work. Emily went to school. Olivia came home with stories about teachers, classmates, and whatever new animal she was convinced needed rescuing. From the outside, everything looked exactly the same. Inside my head, it didn't. I kept replaying one question. When had my wife stopped feeling like she was married to me, while I was standing right beside her? Friday evening gave me an answer I wasn't expecting. Not a complete answer, just a clue. I got home earlier than usual. Emily was sitting on the living room floor with old photo albums spread around her. Olivia was helping organize them into piles. Vacation, Christmas, baby pictures. Murphy had somehow managed to lie directly on top of half the photos. Emily looked up. "Perfect timing. We found evidence." "Of what?" She held up a picture. It was from our honeymoon. We were standing on a beach. My hair was a disaster because of the wind. Emily was laughing so hard she wasn't even looking at the camera. I smiled. "I remember that." "Really?" "Of course." "What happened 5 minutes before this picture?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I don't know." She nodded. "I didn't either." She turned the picture over. Someone had written a note. "Michael tried to impress me by skipping rocks. One bounced backward and landed in his own shoe." I burst out laughing. "Oh, come on." I completely forgot about that. I didn't, Emily smiled. I only remembered because I wrote it down. For the next hour, we kept going through albums. Each picture unlocked another story. The motel where the shower only had freezing water. The tiny diner where we'd accidentally left without paying because we thought the waitress had already taken the money. The road trip where we got lost for 3 hours because I refused to admit the GPS was right. Every memory ended the same way, with us laughing. Not because everything had gone well, because it usually hadn't. Then Olivia picked up another album. This one looks newer. It was. Only 3 years old. She opened it. Birthday party, Christmas morning, school concert, Thanksgiving, family wedding. Then, nothing. She flipped another page. Blank. Another. Blank. Emily frowned. That's weird. There should be more. I reached for my phone. We probably just stopped printing pictures. Emily looked at me. Did we? I opened the gallery. Thousands of photos, work documents, receipts, screenshots, shopping lists, random things I'd meant to remember. Family pictures became strangely rare. I kept scrolling. The last spontaneous picture of Emily and me wasn't from 6 months ago, or a year ago. It was almost 3 years old. After that, every picture of us had been taken because of an event. Someone's birthday, a holiday, an anniversary, a graduation, nothing in between. Emily quietly closed the album. I don't think we stopped taking pictures. What do you mean? I think we stopped doing things that made us want to. Neither of us spoke. Even Olivia stayed unusually quiet. That night I couldn't stop thinking about those empty pages. Not because photographs mattered, because they showed something I'd never noticed. The first 10 years of our marriage had been full of random moments, bad selfies, road trips, burnt dinners, rainy walks, board games, inside jokes. The last 3 years looked like a calendar. Events, obligations, celebrations, nothing ordinary, nothing unexpected. It was as if we'd stopped living between important dates. Saturday morning I decided to change that. Without really thinking, I walked into the kitchen and asked, "Want to go somewhere?" Emily looked up from her coffee. "Where?" "I don't know." She smiled. "You usually know." "I know." "So?" I shrugged. "Let's not." She stared at me for a second. Then a tiny smile appeared. The old Michael would have already planned the route. "I know. So who are you?" "I honestly have no idea." She laughed. "Good." Before I could answer, Olivia ran downstairs. "Where are we going?" Emily looked at me. I looked back at her. Then I smiled. "We'll figure it out on the way." For some reason, those 7 words made Emily happier than anything I'd said in months. We ended up driving with no destination. That hadn't happened in years. Usually every family outing started the same way. Emily would ask where we were going. I'd check reviews, compare parking, look up opening hours, estimate the drive. This time, I just started the car. Olivia leaned forward between the seats. "So, where are we going?" I smiled into the rearview mirror. "I have absolutely no idea," she gasped. "Mom." "I know," Emily said, pretending to be concerned. "This is very unlike him. I think Dad's broken." "I might be." Emily laughed. It was a small laugh, but it stayed with me for the rest of the drive. About 40 minutes later, we found ourselves in a little town neither of us had planned to visit. There wasn't much there. A bakery, an antique shop, a bookstore, a park beside a river. "Well," I said, "this is it." Olivia looked around. "That's it?" "Apparently." She shrugged. "Works for me." We spent nearly 3 hours there. Not because there was a lot to do, because we weren't trying to do anything. Olivia fed ducks until she was convinced one of them had become emotionally attached to her. Emily disappeared into the bookstore and came out carrying a novel she'd been looking for months. I bought a coffee from a tiny cafe where the owner accidentally gave me oat milk instead of regular. He apologized 3 times. I drank it anyway. It wasn't bad. As we walked back toward the car, Emily slipped her hand into mine. Naturally, no hesitation, no awkwardness, no conversation leading up to it. I almost stopped walking, not because it felt strange, because I realized I couldn't remember the last time she'd done it first. On the drive home, Olivia fell asleep in the back seat. Emily looked out the window for a while before speaking. "You've been awfully quiet." "I've been thinking." "I noticed. I keep waiting." "For what?" "For something to go wrong." She looked at me. "Why?" "I don't know. I think." I searched for the words. "It almost feels too easy." Emily smiled sadly. "Does that scare you?" I nodded. "A little." She looked back out the window. "It scares me too." That wasn't the answer I expected. I glanced at her. It does. I keep wondering when we'll turn this into another project. The following Tuesday, I gave us the opportunity. Not on purpose, just out of habit. I came home exhausted after a miserable day at work. A shipment had gone missing. 2 employees had called in sick. By the time I walked through the front door, I was already irritated. Emily was cooking dinner. Hey, everything okay? That simple question was enough. I started talking. About work, about stress, about how overwhelmed I'd been feeling lately. Emily listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked, "That sounds awful." It was. "I'm sorry." Then she hugged me. I hugged her back. We stood there for a few seconds, then she let go. "Dinner's almost ready." I blinked. "That's it?" She frowned. "What do you mean? Aren't we going to talk about why I've been stressed lately?" She looked genuinely confused. "You already told me." "No, I mean, the deeper reason." She smiled. "Michael." "Yeah? You had a bad day." That's allowed. That sentence stayed with me. You had a bad day. That's allowed. For years, I would have turned that evening into something much bigger. Maybe I was overworked. Maybe I wasn't setting boundaries. Maybe the stress was making me emotionally unavailable. Maybe we needed to adjust how we supported each other. Instead, I ate dinner, played a board game with Olivia, watched half a movie with Emily before we both fell asleep on the couch. By the next morning, my bad day was over. Not solved, just over. A few nights later, I found Emily sitting alone on the back porch. She was watching the wind move through the trees. I sat beside her. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, I asked, "Can I tell you something?" She nodded. I think I've spent years believing every problem meant something was wrong with our marriage. She didn't answer immediately. She kept looking at the trees. Then she quietly said, "I know." I don't think I ever realized I was doing it. "I know," I laughed softly. "You say 'I know' a lot." She smiled. "I've had more time to think about it than you." I looked down at my hands. "I honestly don't know how to stop." Emily reached over and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to stop." I looked at her. "You just have to stop asking every problem to tell you the future." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She took a slow breath. "If Olivia catches a cold, we don't spend the whole night wondering if she'll always be sick." I nodded. "If your car won't start one morning, you don't assume it'll never run again." Another pause. "But every time something went wrong between us, we immediately asked ourselves if it meant our marriage was falling apart." For a long moment, neither of us said anything, because I knew she was right. I just wasn't ready to admit how many years we'd lived that way. About a week later, I made the mistake I'd been expecting. Not because it was huge, because it felt familiar. Emily had asked me to pick Olivia up from soccer practice. 5:30, simple enough. Around 4, my boss stopped by my office. "Got a minute?" Those 3 words turned into an hour. By the time I looked at my phone, I had 6 missed calls. 3 from Emily, 3 from Olivia. My stomach dropped. I was halfway to the parking lot before Emily called again. "I've got her," she said. "I'm so sorry." "I know." I completely lost track of time. I figured, "I'll be home in 20. Drive safely." She hung up. That was it. No sigh, no lecture, no disappointment in her voice. Just, "Drive safely." The entire drive home, I rehearsed the conversation we were definitely about to have. This wasn't just about forgetting Olivia. It was about priorities, reliability, trust, being present. I knew how these conversations worked. We'd had them before. They always started with one mistake and ended somewhere much bigger. When I walked through the front door, Olivia was sitting at the kitchen island eating cereal. "Cereal?" Emily smiled from the stove. "She requested breakfast for dinner." Olivia raised her spoon. It felt appropriate. "I'm really sorry." "I know." Emily tasted the soup. "It happens." "It shouldn't." "No, but it did." I stood there waiting. Emily kept stirring the soup. Finally, I asked, "You're really not angry?" She turned off the burner. I was. The honesty caught me off guard. "You were?" "For about 15 minutes. And now?" She shrugged. "Now you're home." I didn't know what to do with that answer. Part of me almost wanted her to keep being angry. At least then the world would make sense again. After dinner, Olivia disappeared upstairs to finish some homework. Emily started loading the dishwasher. "I'll do it," I said. "You cooked." She smiled. "Deal." For a few minutes, all I could hear was running water and dishes clinking together. Finally, I couldn't hold it anymore. "Can I ask you something?" "You always can. Why didn't we talk about it?" She placed another plate into the dishwasher. We are. No. I mean, she waited. I thought we'd have one of our conversations. Emily leaned against the counter. Michael, yeah? You forgot to pick up our daughter. I know. You apologized. I know. You'll probably set 3 reminders next time. I definitely will. She smiled. So what exactly would another hour of talking accomplish? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She walked over and rested a hand on my arm. I think this is where we got lost. What do you mean? We stopped believing people could simply make mistakes. I frowned. We started believing every mistake revealed who they really were. That sentence followed me for days. At work, driving home, lying awake at night. Every time I thought about our old conversations, I realized how often we'd done exactly that. If I forgot something, I wasn't forgetful. I was taking Emily for granted. If she seemed distracted, she wasn't tired. She was emotionally unavailable. Every small moment had become evidence that something bigger was wrong. Friday afternoon, I opened the drawer of my desk looking for a stapler. Instead, I found an old notebook, the one I'd used during couples therapy. I flipped through it while waiting for a meeting to start. There were pages filled with questions. What patterns are repeating? How did this make you feel? What does your partner's behavior say about your relationship? Then I reached a page I'd written almost a year earlier. I had listed 10 things that worried me about our marriage. I read them slowly. Communication, distance, appreciation, quality time, stress, intimacy, housework, future, connection, trust. I sat back in my chair. Then I tried to remember which of those were actually problems today. Not memories, not fears. Today, one by one, they disappeared. Communication? We'd talked more naturally in the last month than we had in years. Quality time? We'd accidentally spent more time together simply because we weren't scheduling conversations about spending time together. Distance? Emily had reached for my hand without thinking. Trust? She'd trusted me enough to believe forgetting Olivia didn't define me as a father. By the time I reached the bottom of the list, I realized something that genuinely frightened me. I wasn't sure whether we'd fixed our marriage, or whether we'd spent years convincing ourselves it was more broken than it really was. And for the first time, I wasn't certain I knew the difference. The answer came from someone I never expected. Not a therapist, not a book, not Emily, Olivia. It happened on a rainy Saturday. Emily was cleaning out the hall closet while I was in the garage pretending to organize tools I'd already organized twice. Olivia wandered in carrying a cardboard box. Dad? Yeah? I found something. Inside the box were old board games, Uno, Monopoly, a puzzle with 3 missing pieces. Then at the bottom, a mason jar. I recognized it immediately. What is that? Olivia asked. Emily walked in behind her. The moment she saw it, she smiled. I forgot we still had that. I looked at the jar. So did I. When Olivia unscrewed the lid, dozens of tiny folded pieces of paper spilled across the floor. She picked one up. Can I read it? Emily looked at me. I nodded. Go ahead. Olivia unfolded the paper. Michael burned grilled cheese 3 times before getting one right. She laughed. That's true? I was learning. Emily rolled her eyes. You nearly set off the smoke alarm. Olivia opened another one. We drove 2 hours to the wrong campsite. Another. Murphy stole an entire birthday cake. Another. Power went out, so we ate cereal by candlelight. She couldn't stop smiling. Why did you write these? Emily answered. We started putting one happy memory in the jar every week. When? Years ago. Olivia looked inside again. Why did you stop? The room became very quiet. Emily and I looked at each other. Neither of us knew. That evening, after Olivia went upstairs, I carried the jar into the kitchen. We emptied every note onto the table. There had to be over 100. Each one was tiny. 1 sentence. Sometimes only 5 words. None of them were big moments. Nobody had written, "Best anniversary ever," or "Perfect vacation." Instead, they said things like, "Got caught in the rain and laughed the whole walk home." Ordered pizza because we ruined dinner. Olivia called spaghetti long noodles of happiness. Spent an hour looking for my glasses. They were on my head. I kept reading. Then I noticed something. Every note ended around the same time. 3 years earlier, almost to the month. I looked at Emily. That's when we started therapy. She nodded. I know. Neither of us said anything for a while. I kept staring at the pile of memories. Finally, I asked, "Why do you think we stopped?" Emily answered so quietly I almost didn't hear her. I think We got so busy trying to save our marriage that we stopped noticing it. I picked up another note. Went out for ice cream because we couldn't decide what to make for dinner. I smiled. I remember this. Emily laughed. You dropped yours. It landed upside down. You looked like someone had died. I was very attached to that ice cream. For a moment, it felt exactly like the couple who had written those notes. Then I realized something. We hadn't been remembering arguments. We'd been remembering life. That night, after Emily had gone to bed, I stayed downstairs. The jar sat in front of me. Beside it, my old therapy notebook. I opened both. On one side, pages of problems, communication, conflict, emotional needs, relationship goals. On the other, 100 tiny moments that had made us laugh. I looked from one to the other, then back again. Suddenly, something became impossible to ignore. For 2 years, I had carefully documented everything that was wrong with our marriage. I hadn't written down a single thing that was right. Not one. I closed the notebook, folded the last memory back into the jar, and for the first time, I understood what Emily had been trying to tell me all along. We hadn't fallen out of love. We'd simply trained ourselves to pay attention to the wrong evidence. The marriage I'd been trying so desperately to save had been quietly happening around me the entire time. I just hadn't been looking at it. The next morning, I made breakfast, not because it was my turn, just because I woke up first. Emily walked into the kitchen wearing one of my old college sweatshirts. She smiled when she saw pancakes. What's the occasion? I shrugged. Saturday. She laughed. I like Saturday. So do I. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. It wasn't awkward. Years ago, I would have rushed to fill the silence. Now, it felt comfortable. After breakfast, Olivia asked if we could go bike riding. Emily looked at me. I haven't ridden a bike in years. Neither have I. This could end badly. It probably will. Olivia clapped. That's a yes. An hour later, we were riding through a park a few miles from home. Olivia disappeared ahead of us almost immediately. Emily stayed beside me. I forgot how hard this is. We're getting old. Speak for yourself. She bumped my shoulder with hers. 5 seconds later, she almost rode into a bush. I laughed so hard I had to stop pedaling. Don't. I'm sorry. No, you're not. I'm really not. She started laughing too, the kind of laugh that makes riding a bicycle almost impossible. On the way home, we stopped for coffee. Olivia insisted on hot chocolate. The girl behind the counter accidentally gave Emily my drink and me hers. We both took a sip before realizing it. Emily burst out laughing. You always steal my coffee. I guess today the universe saved me the trouble. She rolled her eyes. I should have known. That evening, while Olivia was upstairs talking to a friend, Emily and I sat on the back porch. The sun was beginning to set. I've been thinking, I said. Emily smiled. I know that look. I owe you an apology. She looked surprised. For what? For believing every problem needed to become a conversation about us. She stayed quiet. I continued. I thought I was protecting our marriage. I know, but I think I stopped trusting it. She looked at me. What do you mean? I acted like one bad day could destroy 15 good years. Emily's eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, recognition. She reached for my hand. Can I tell you something? Always. I never wanted us to stop communicating. I know. I wanted us to stop interrogating our happiness. I smiled. That's a good way to put it. She laughed softly. I spent 2 years feeling like every week ended with an exam. Did we pass? Sometimes. And when we didn't, she looked away. I spent days wondering if I was failing you. Those words hurt because I'd never wanted her to feel that way. Not once. I squeezed her hand. I'm done grading us. She looked back at me. You mean that? I do. There'll still be arguments. I know. I'll still annoy you. Definitely. You already do. She laughed. And you'll still leave cabinet doors open. I've been doing that for 15 years. And I'll still remind you. As you should. For a moment, we both smiled. Then Emily asked quietly, So, what do we do now? I looked toward the backyard. Murphy was chasing absolutely nothing. Olivia was laughing through the open bedroom window upstairs. A warm breeze moved through the trees. I smiled. I think we just keep living. A few weeks later, I found the memory jar again. This time, it wasn't hidden in a closet. It was sitting on the kitchen counter. Beside it was a stack of blank pieces of paper. I picked one up. Emily walked into the room. Without saying a word, she picked up another. We both started writing. Mine said, Emily almost crashed into a bush because she was laughing too hard. She folded hers before I could read it. What did you write? She smiled. You'll find out someday. We dropped both notes into the jar. They landed on top of 100 others. Not because we were trying to save our marriage, because we were finally paying attention to it. Looking back now, I don't think our marriage was ever falling apart. It was simply disappearing beneath all the effort we thought love required. We spent years trying to understand every problem, every feeling, every disagreement, and somewhere along the way, we forgot to notice all the ordinary moments that quietly reminded us why we loved each other in the first place. The strange part is, our marriage didn't become stronger the day we stopped talking about it. It became stronger the day we stopped treating every difficult moment like evidence that it was broken. Sometimes, the healthiest thing we ever said to each other was nothing at all.